Hey, it's Eric Hunter here, and I want to talk about an important principle in pendulum healing and also in energy healing or any kind of healing work generally. And that's the law of three. So the law of three, you probably haven't heard of it unless you're into esoteric studies or occult studies. There was a guy named George Gurdjieff, and he introduced some teachings to Russians and then eventually to Europeans. And he said that there was this mystical process called the law of three. And it was a law of nature. And basically what it says is that whenever you take an action, you're going to hit resistance eventually to that action that you are taking. And unless there is an outside force that shifts the dynamic, you will not be able to progress further with what you are doing. So, an example of that is like, you are writing, you have to write a proposal or a job application or an essay or something like that. And then you reach a point where, you just can't do it anymore, like you're stuck. So then you have to have some sort of outside influence come in to relieve the tension of that situation that allows you then to finish. So I want to show you an illustration of this. And this is a really super, super important concept. All right, so here it is. So he represented as a triangle. And in Christianity, there's this concept, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And unbeknownst to most Christians who are aware of that concept, this concept is the esoteric underpinning of what that means. But that's a side note. So when you're doing pendulum work, or if you're doing energy healing, you are utilizing this law of three. And if you're not aware of it, you won't be as effective at what you do. So the basic idea here is that at the top of this pyramid is called the first force. This is the active force. So this is taking action. So you feel sick and you take action to feel better. Okay. Now the second force or denying force is down here. And this is called passive, but a better term for it is denying force. And this is the opposition that you get when you take an action. So you're not feeling well, you take some steps to feel better, but it's not doing anything. You're not feeling better, you still feel bad. So there's this tension that's occurring. And this always occurs in nature. The first few steps of action are usually easy, but then after a few steps, you'll start hitting this wall of tension where you can't really progress anymore unless an outside force comes in. And the outside force is called the third force. And what the third force does is it neutralizes or it undoes the effect of the denying force, of the second force. So think about it. You're not feeling well. You're taking actions to feel better. It's not working. So you call a healer. The healer does some work on you and then you feel better. So the healer was acting as the third force. They were an outside influence that shifted the dynamic that allowed you to overcome the resistance. And Gurdjieff said that the third force was invisible. And in most cases, it will be invisible, but not always. So with pendulum alchemy, everything you do with pendulum alchemy and pendulum healing, you are the third force. So this is why pendulum alchemy and pendulum healing works really well when you apply it to actions that are already being taken. So let's say you want to get more money. If you just sit in your room with your pendulum and say, okay, I want more money, bring more money to me, you're acting as the first force with your pendulum and you're going to hit resistance. I mean, it may work. There's always a chance, but more than likely it's not going to work. So what's better? Well, let's say you want to make more money. So then you send out an email to your list. You send out resumes. You start telling every friend you're looking for a job. You volunteer somewhere where you want to work or whatever. You figure out some way. You play the lottery, anything, any kind of action to make money. You take some kind of action, and then you do the pendulum work to support those actions. So the pendulum can act as the third force. You take the action hits resistance, then you send energy with the pendulum to shift the dynamic to make it more likely for the action to occur because the resistance is resolved. And this is the proper use of pendulum healing. It's also the proper use of any form of energy healing or shamanism or anything like that. It's always acting as a third force to resolve the tension between the first and second forces. So this is why I always tell people never do the pendulum in isolation. Always combine the pendulum work with practical, real-world steps that you're taking to solve your problem. And that is when it will be most effective. So, you know, you're not feeling well, go to a doctor and do pendulum around that. If you get a medication, do pendulum around that. So, you know, the active thing is taking the medication, it hits some resistance, the pendulum can relieve the resistance, the medication can be more effective, etc. Like I gave the example before, you need money, start looking for a job, start figuring out ways to make money, you know, and then do the pendulum to support that. So I can't tell you how many times people are like, well, I did the pendulum and nothing happened. It's like, well, if you don't take any action, there's nothing for the pendulum to work on. The pendulum is the first force. It hits resistance and there's no third force coming in to relieve the tension. So take actions in the real world and do the pendulum to support those actions. So another great example, let's say you own a business and you send out emails to a list. Take your time, craft the email, build your list. But when you send that email out, do pendulum to support people opening the email, reading it. I can't tell you how successful that has been, both for myself and other people, with helping people to grow their email list, doing pendulum to support the opening of the emails, and also getting people to sign up for the program if it's in their highest good and the highest good of all concerned, of course. So recently, one of the healers who was certified in my program, I hired her to do a healing for someone for their business, for email. She did a resonance healing for them. And the person had, you know, done all the groundwork. They had been the first force. They organized the website for the event. They got a great list of speakers. They had JV partners. They had all these people who would send out the email to their list for them. They had it all. It was all worked out perfectly. And for some reason, it just wasn't getting any traction. Like, had very few, like, you know, relatively few people sign up, like only 100 or something on the first day. It was kind of surprising, like everything looked amazing. Why isn't this working? So I had her do the resonance healing for this person. And that's because this person's extremely gifted at doing this. And so that resonance healing resulted in the next day, over 350 additional people signed up in a day. So why am I, and then at the end, there was like over 500 or 600 people who signed up and a lot of upgrades, and it was an extremely successful event. So what was going on there? The person did the groundwork. The person did all of the work necessary for success, but they were hitting this resistance of the passive denying force. They call it passive because you can't go any further. You just come still, but it's more like a denying. It's more active. That's the correct term, even though Gurdjieff called it passive. Anyway, so the pendulum resolved that. Now, how does it do that? It shifts the energy, it shifts the dynamic so like, let's say here's the active force, here's a passive force, they're butting heads against each other. The pendulum shifts the dynamic and makes a new possibility possible, so the active force can get around the denying force, or the denying force can become neutralized, or the pendulum can stimulate something else that then acts, and then that resolves the tension. So there are a lot of ways that this can play out. So the key takeaway from this video is pendulum alchemy and pendulum healing is amazing. Always give it a try. You never know what's going to happen. but just realize it always works best when it has something to play against. It has to have an active force and a denying force interacting with each other in order for it to be most effective. So if you just sit and do pendulum and don't take any actions, don't say anything to anybody, just are in your head, just doing this, you're probably not going to be very successful. But if you're doing this pendulum work while actively doing things, you're going to have much more success with what you're doing. And it will be much more effective because you will be doing it in accordance with the esoteric principles that govern the metaphysics of reality. So anyway, chew on that, think about it. You can post your questions and comments below. Make sure to like this video and also to check out my website, pendulumalchemy.com. You can learn a lot. I've got free courses, lots of resources, really nice pendulums like this purple goddess that are unique and great energy. If you're an energy sensitive, you love energy, you're going to love my pendulums. All right. Well, thanks for watching this video. I hope you have a great day. Bye.